Dawn arrives with a metallic whisper. Gates closing, tools clinking, breath held. On these farms, the threat is not a storm or a market crash. It moves on four hooves and terrifies entire seasons. Wild boar, they sweep from the woods at night, trampling fields, overturning fences, stealing the labor of a year and hours. Families watch harvest vanish and feel a wound deeper than loss. Trust in the land. Farmers trade rifles for plans. Hunting gave way to trapping, panic to patient strategy. Tonight, a small community tests an idea built from observation. Baited steel cages, fermented corn, secret observation hides, and coordinated patrols that read tracks like weather charts. You will watch the instant a trap falls. The slam, the stunned silence, the fragile victory. This is not bloodlust. It is survival, engineering, and quiet courage. Stay with us. The next segment reveals techniques, mistakes, and the human cost of reclaiming the fields. Watch closely. The craft is costly and human. Night after night, the farmers watched the same pattern unfold. Just after darkness settled over the fields, the forest edge began to move, first a shadow, then another, and suddenly the ground trembled under dozens of hooves. Wild boars poured into farmland like a living wave, snouts digging into the soil, ripping young plants from the earth. Corn rows collapsed, vegetable beds turned to mud, and fences that took weeks to build were crushed in seconds. For the families who lived there, every sunrise became a painful inspection of what remained. Instead of reacting with panic, the farmers began to study their enemy. They walked the borders of their land at dawn, searching for tracks, broken branches, and the deep marks left by tusks in the soil. Slowly a pattern appeared. The boars used the same trails every night, moving between water sources and feeding grounds with almost military discipline. If those routes could be predicted, they could be controlled. That realization changed everything. Rather than chasing the animals through fields and forests, the farmers decided to let the boars come to them. Steel panels were welded into massive cages strong enough to hold an entire herd. Each structure was carefully placed along the routes the animals already trusted. But a trap alone would not be enough. The real secret was attraction. Buckets of fermented corn, fruit scraps, and grain were scattered near the entrances of the cages. The smell carried far into the night air, irresistible to hungry animals. Cameras and hidden observation points allowed farmers to monitor the traps without disturbing the area. For several nights, nothing happened. The boars circled cautiously, testing the scent, sensing something unfamiliar. Then one night curiosity won. A young boar stepped inside the enclosure, drawn by the bait. Others followed. The farmers watched from a distance as more animals pushed through the open gate. When the moment was right, a simple mechanism triggered. With a heavy crash, the steel door dropped, sealing the entrance. Dust rose. The trapped herd roared and slammed against the bars. But the structure held firm. For the first time, the farmers had stopped the destruction without firing a single shot. It was a turning point, proof that patience and strategy could succeed where force had failed. News of the capture spread quickly through neighboring farms. Within days, other landowners came to study the design, measuring the gates, inspecting the trigger systems, and learning how the bait was prepared. What began as a desperate experiment started to grow into a coordinated effort. Traps were placed across different properties. forming a network that slowly reduced the nightly invasions. The fields were still tense and uncertain, but for the first time in many seasons, farmers felt something unfamiliar returning to the countryside: hope. Each capture built confidence, proving patience and cooperation could defend the land. Together, now. As the network of traps expanded across the countryside, the battle against the wild boars slowly began to shift. What once felt like chaos started turning into coordination. Farmers who had once fought the problem alone now shared information daily. Messages moved quickly from one property to another. Fresh tracks near the river, a broken fence at the southern pasture, a herd spotted moving through the hills at dusk. Each report helped build a clearer picture of how the animals moved across the land. With better communication came better strategy. Teams were formed to patrol different sections of farmland during the evening hours. Some farmers focused on maintaining the traps, checking bait levels and repairing steel gates. Others specialized in tracking, studying footprints in disturbed soil to predict where the next herd might appear. A few experienced hunters joined the effort as well, bringing years of knowledge about animal behavior and forest terrain. Their role was not simply to hunt, but to guide the operation. They taught the farmers how to read subtle signs in nature: the direction of broken grass, the depth of a hoofprint, the difference between old tracks and fresh ones. These small details allowed the patrols to move efficiently, placing traps exactly where they would be most effective. Slowly, the countryside began to transform into a coordinated defense system. At the same time, local authorities started paying closer attention to the growing crisis. Reports of crop destruction and economic losses had reached regional offices, forcing officials to act. Government wildlife specialists arrived to study the situation and help create organized control programs. Instead of random and dangerous attempts to eliminate the animals, the goal was now structured management. Workshops were held in rural communities where experts demonstrated safe trapping techniques, explained the ecological risks of uncontrolled populations, and provided guidelines for humane capture. Farmers learned how to handle trapped animals responsibly and how to avoid harming native wildlife that shared the same habitat. These programs also introduced standardized trap designs that were stronger, safer, and more effective. Despite the progress, the challenge remained enormous. Wild boars are highly intelligent and adaptable creatures. As traps appeared in more areas, the animals began changing their behavior. Some herds avoided certain trails, while others moved deeper into forests before emerging again under cover darkness. The conflict had entered a new stage, one that demanded constant learning and adjustment. But something important had already changed in the countryside. The fear and frustration that once divided the farmers had been replaced by cooperation. Neighboring farms worked together like a single unit, protecting fields that stretched far beyond any one property line. And with each passing season, the balance between human life and the wild landscape slowly began to stabilize again. The war was far from over, but the people of the land had discovered their greatest advantage: unity. Seasons passed, and the fields slowly began to recover from years of destruction. The land that once looked torn and lifeless started showing signs of renewal. Fresh crops pushed through the soil, green rows replacing the muddy scars left by the nightly invasions. Farmers who once woke every morning fearing what they would find now walked their fields with cautious optimism. The silence of dawn no longer felt like defeat, but like the calm after a long struggle. The network of traps and coordinated patrols continued to operate across the region, Farmers had learned that consistency mattered more than force. Bait was replaced regularly, cages were reinforced, and every captured bird was carefully documented. Over time, these records revealed valuable patterns. The boars were intelligent and adaptable, but their movements still followed the logic of food, water, and shelter. By understanding those needs, the farmers could predict where the animals might appear next. As the pressure from the wild boar decreased, nature slowly reclaimed its balance. Grass and native plants returned to areas that had been dug up and overturned. The soil, once constantly disturbed, began holding moisture again, allowing crops to grow stronger. Small streams that had been clouded with mud ran clearer with every passing season. Along the riverbanks and forest edges, native animals started appearing more frequently, signaling that the ecosystem was healing. Yet the farmers knew the conflict had not truly ended. Wild boars were now firmly established in the region, and eliminating them entirely was neither realistic nor responsible. Instead, the goal became long-term balance. Too little control could allow the population to explode again, while too much pressure could disturb the surrounding wildlife. The challenge was to manage the situation carefully, protecting crops without damaging the environment that supported their livelihoods. Authorities continued supporting rural communities with training programs, improved trap designs, and wildlife monitoring initiatives. Agricultural groups shared resources and equipment, making it easier for even the smallest farms to participate in the effort. What had once been scattered attempts at survival evolved into a coordinated regional strategy built on knowledge and cooperation. But perhaps the most powerful result of the struggle was the unity it created among the people who lived on the land. Neighbors who once worked independently had become partners in a shared mission. They exchanged information, helped maintain traps, and watched over one another's fields as if they were their own. The challenge that once threatened their survival had strengthened the bonds of their community. Today, the countryside carries both memory and pride. The farmers know the fight demanded patience, creativity, and resilience. More importantly, it taught them that protecting the land is not only about defending crops. It is about respecting nature, adapting to change, and working together when the future of an entire community is at stake.